In this episode, I want to talk to you about the editor that we'll be using during the course. Now, in web development, you have to use a code editor. Okay. Why do you need it? Because you will be typing code. So obviously, you need some kind of software to type your code. Now, one thing you have to understand is when you're programming, usually you would have, with traditional programming languages like C or C++ or C sharp or Java and things like that, you would normally use a IDE. It stands for Integrated Development Environment. Okay. Now, the thing about web development is because JavaScript, HTML, and CSS are designed for flexibility and convenience, they don't have an IDE as such. So we have to use a different combination of tools to get it working. Now, if you already have some experience in programming, this might seem a little strange, but if you don't have any experience, then this will become the default way. Now, there are many code editors for web development. But in this course, we will be using VS Code Editor, that is Visual Studio Code. Now, the name Visual Studio might be familiar to you if you've done any kind of reading about programming. Visual Studio is the IDE for C Sharp and C++ related development. It is from Microsoft. Now, so Microsoft, the same company which made Visual Studio, is also the owner, even though the software is open source, is also the owner of Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio is the standard IDE you would use for developing C Sharp and C++ applications, whereas Visual Studio Code is primarily meant for web development and things like that. But of course, Visual Studio Code can also be used for C++, C Sharp, and all that. But just to give you like a contrast and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and see how it looks. Okay, so let me just get, what I've done is I've opened the mini project, the mini milestone project that you will be building at the end of this course. I've opened that here. Let me get it up on the screen. There you go. That is a Visual Studio Code. So what you would do is you would download this. Let me get the website here. There you go. So you can just Google it, Visual Studio Code, or you can just go to the website code.visualstudio.com, and then you can download the software. Now you can see here that one of the things I like about Visual Studio is is that it is available for Windows, it is available for Mac. That's another thing I like about this, because you might be learning from this course on a Windows computer, you might be learning from this course on a Mac computer, or even Linux if you're feeling adventurous. I usually recommend for beginners you use a Mac, okay, because for web development I think a Mac computer, a MacBook Air, or if that is too expensive for you, even a Mac Mini, which I believe is has similar pricing compared to a Windows computer, is what I would recommend for web development, simply because it is much easier to for a beginner especially to use a Mac. But of course I also have many Windows computers. I'm a gamer, so I have many very powerful and expensive gaming computers. So if you're in Windows, that's great too. Or as I said, Linux I would not recommend for beginners. Nothing against Linux, but it is more of an adventurous way of doing things, if you ask me, because you have to do a lot of things by yourself. So yeah, so if you're learning, I would recommend you either use a Mac or a Windows. So there you go. Visual Studio Code is available on Mac and Windows, and because it is the same software, if you happen to have a Windows computer and a Mac computer, you can easily switch between these two things on the same day or the same week. Like maybe at home you have a Windows machine, and when you're traveling you have a MacBook Air or something. So again, Visual Studio Code gives the same experience across platforms. So that's another reason why I like Visual Studio Code. Now, you can see here how it looks. So let me go ahead and get that. Let me go ahead and get that here. Where is my project? I'm just getting my project back on the screen again. There you go. So once you install it, In the other video, I was speaking about GitHub, terminal tools, and all those things. So you probably already have seen Visual Studio Code on your computer. Otherwise, this is a good time for you to go ahead and install the version as per your computer and start using it. So here what I've done is, this is what you'll be seeing most of the time when I am teaching. You will see the editor open like this, and then you have all the files here. Okay, and then whenever you are coding, there is a nice option here which is called split window. I always like to use split window because when you're coding, you'll have multiple files open, especially when you're working with web development. You'll be looking at the HTML file, you'll be looking at CSS file. Sometimes you have to look at them both at the same time. So what I'll do is I'll open the CSS file on the right side. Right now, I'm not using much of CSS in this because I'm using Bootstrap for most of the styling. We'll talk about Bootstrap in a future episode. And then here you have the left side, the HTML file. Or maybe I'm working on HTML and I'm working on JavaScript at the same time. So again, I can look at it side by side, scroll up and down separately, and also hold on, yeah, there you go, and scroll up and down here. Okay, and if you want more space, you can always hide and show the Explorer window. And you know what, if you have a bigger monitor, like a 4K monitor or something like that, I don't have a 4K monitor right now, so you can actually keep opening even more split windows. So I can split this again. Hold on, let me do that. There you go. So I can have as many split windows I want. This is very, very useful. Again, in web development, you'll be working across many files. So it is not uncommon for developers, maybe not in this course. This is mainly meant for beginners, but once you start using frameworks and things like that, having 3, 4, even more than 4, some people obviously, if you're really serious about programming, I would recommend you have 2 monitors, so that you can have even more windows open. It becomes very, very useful to have a multi-monitor setup. Usually when I'm working on a project, what I do is I have my big gaming computer. I attach 2 more monitors to it, a 4K monitor for the main screen, and then additional 2K or a regular standard full HD monitors on either side, so it looks like a movie or something. But that is actually a very standard developer setup. So something you may want to consider, not right now. This is just a beginner course. You can do the whole thing in a single screen, but as you grow as a developer, a 2 monitor or a 3 monitor setup is not a bad idea. So that's another thing about VS Code. You can open multiple windows. Let me close that. I just want to stick to 2 windows right now. Another thing I like about VS Code is that it has all these extensions. Okay, extensions are like small apps, like how on your phone you have apps. Like for example, right now I'm recording this video where I'm actually using my iPhone as the camera, because the iPhone has good camera, so it makes me look good, the clarity is good and all that. So so because of this app on the iPhone, I'm able to use the iPhone's camera in my recording. So now the iPhone is become my camera. Okay, so like this on phone, you on iPad, iPhones, you install apps, right? So just like that, in VS Code, you can install these extensions, which are these apps built by different companies to give you extra features. For example, like I'm using web development, so we use the extension called, let me just scroll it down here. There it is. There's an extension called Live Preview. Okay, so usually when you're coding as part of the process, you have to install this extension. So I'm just going to leave it on the screen for a minute. Okay, make sure you have the Live Preview extension installed. Now, what does it do? Like the title suggests, it helps you preview your output. So look at this. There's a small icon here. That icon is from Live Preview extension. I click on this. There you go. That is the web app I am building. So I can type here, I can look at the output here, and there you go. So like this, extensions give you a lot of features. Another extension I use a lot is GitHub Copilot. I think this is something I want to talk about a little bit. So let me just open my this here. Hold on. Yeah, there you go. So let me just see. So yeah, Visual Studio Code, it is from Microsoft, as I mentioned. Extensions, I was talking about extensions. So one extension I already mentioned is the Live Preview extension. Okay, you would have to install those things on your computer. Another extension I like to use is GitHub Copilot and also GitHub Copilot Chat. Okay, now I am sure you already heard about AI technology. It's on the news everywhere. Everybody's talking about it, even regular media. So even if you're not a programmer, you would have definitely heard about AI by now. So I am a very, very big fan of AI. And I use AI, paid AI services every day as part of my daily life in coding and everyday life as well. So again, if you end up getting the GitHub Copilot AI subscription, it is a good idea. I am very pro AI, and I believe it can really help you in your developer journey. So another extension that you want to use, for example, I can show you right now. So you can see here, like this is the AI GitHub Copilot. I can ask a question like, hey, what is the best editor for web development? And it's thinking, yeah, it's thinking, and I'm sure it'll recommend VS Code. Oh, it says there isn't a definitive answer, but it must recommend. Ah, there it is, Visual Studio Code. I'm sure you can see it here. There are some other brands as well. There you go. The AI is like helping me out. Sublime Text, another brand I've heard about it. Atom, I've definitely heard about that. WebStorm, that's new to me. Brackets, again, that's new to me. So there you go. So that's another reason, whenever I'm working, a lot of times I have a question about technology. I have been working for many years, but still, there's always the need to reconfirm your own knowledge. And especially if you're a new developer, it is a good idea to have something which can just ask answers almost immediately without you having to go online and search and find the answer. Okay, now I'm not saying AI will answer all the questions, and of course you can't just trust AI by default, but it is a good, like a friend to have when you're working in programming. So I would wholeheartedly recommend you go ahead and see if you can afford it. Of course, it is a premium service, it's not free. So, but yeah, if you do end up paying for it and get it, then please install the extensions GitHub Copilot and GitHub Copilot Chat. Some other extensions that I use, let me just quickly show that to you. I use, as I mentioned, I do some C Sharp as well. So I've installed those extensions, but you don't need it. Prettier is the extension which you can install. It helps you format the code, make it look nice. So that's a good extension to have. Another one I use Azure, but it's not part of the training. But if you want, you can give Azure a spin. No problem. I think that's all the main ones which are relevant for this course. So there you go. You have GitHub Copilot, GitHub Copilot Chat. Again, only if you have the paid subscription. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to work. A live preview, yes, that is free, and you definitely need it for the course. And Prettier, it helps the code become pretty. So another good extension for you to have. And of course, VS Code has a lot of other small simple things which help, because for example, you can log in with your GitHub account, and that syncs all your settings. So I have many computers. I think I have some 8 or 10 computers in my office. So I don't know which computer I'll be using on any given day. I keep jumping from one computer to another depending on my work. So all my settings, everything gets synced. That's another feature I like about VS Code. There are some other things, like for example, I can make VS Code look different. Like you can see here that I'm using a white over color kind of text. But some people like, they want to make it like dark skinned or something. But you can actually go and change, the color themes. Look at that, like that. I don't like these things, but I know people have their own preferences. So there you go. You can change the theme if you want. Um yeah, like dark mode. I've seen a lot of developers, they prefer dark mode, but my eyes, I am old, so I prefer the simple light theme. So I'm just gonna go to there you go, back to normal. That's another thing I like about Visual Studio Code, and it's very lightweight. It's very lightweight, so even on a basic Mac, I have a Mac Mini right now, which I use for recording tutorials and stuff like that. I don't think Mac Mini is good enough for developer work, but it's definitely good enough for some light workload and things like that. So here I'm using a Mac Mini, so I like to have light things running on my machine. I don't want to task it too much. So VS Code runs fine even on a basic computer like Mac Mini. So there you go. That's another reason to like VS Code. Let me see if there's anything else I missed out. GitHub Copilot, I mentioned it already. It is free and open source, so you don't have to pay money for it. It works on Mac and Windows, and then it supports all languages. So in case you like to branch out outside of web development, let's say you want to try out C Sharp or C++ or C or Python or Java or anything else that it catches your fancy, many languages are supported either by default or through extensions. So it does have a nice extension ecosystem. So a lot of extensions are available on ES Code, and it is very popular with developers. Okay, so I'm sure VS Code is in the top three editors in the world right now, and a lot of developers have nothing but good things to say about it. So there you go. That is all about the VS Code and the editor, and this is the editor we will be using in our course. So I would recommend you use that. You can use any editor you want, but in the course we will be using VS Code only and nothing else, with all the extensions that I showed you. So thank you.